I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast.
So who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all grown up? Who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all for us? Yeah.
Today's guest is Theresa Bell. Theresa is considered by many as one of the best acting coaches in Dallas, and I would have to agree. She spent time in Los Angeles as a successful actress, where she had roles in 3 Oliver Stone films and several appearances on the show Nightcourt during its peak, just to name a few. Theresa had the privilege to be mentored by Roy London, acting coach to the stars, which had a profound effect on her life and career. She's also a fantastic screenwriter and was a top 30 finalist in the first season of Project Greenlight. Enjoy my chat with Theresa Bell. We are here with Theresa Bell in the Cedars. Theresa's an acting coach, and well, let's. How about you tell us who you are?
Right now I'm mainly an acting coach, but I'm also a screenwriter, and I'm an oil painter. So.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
How does that fit into everything? Is that something you just started doing?
The oil painting, or it's one of those things I wanted to do for a really long time, and then it's been 7 years. I asked my son and my daughter-in-law to take me to one of those, paint and doodle, sip and doodle or whatever. And they took me, and I had never, ever painted before. And, you have a couple hours. And so I did my little painting. And when it was finished, it was one of the few in the room that actually looked like, an actual painting, a work of art. And I said, I might have some talent here. So I got my supplies. I took some classes. And that's, when I do have some free time, that's what I like to do.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. If this is yours right here.
Yeah, that's mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's nice. That's really
Thank
nice.
you.
So, let's start at the beginning. So, First of all, are you a Texan?
I am not. I'm originally from a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved here in the 80s, and then I actually started acting in Dallas in the late 80s, and then I moved to Los Angeles in 1990. I was there for 10 years, and then family reasons brought me back to Dallas in 2000. And, it looks like this is where I'll be. Yeah.
Great. For me, I lived in LA and I love Dallas so much.
Yeah. I don't know that I could live there again.
No, it's changed so rapidly. And
yeah, very much so.
I feel like just to live, you have to be doing so much work that you don't really want to be doing.
I know.
So was that high school, like when you got to Texas, like when you were going to school here?
I had already graduated from high school. I came to Texas in short order. I was married and had a baby. But I started acting. I did a little modeling. Then I started acting, in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, doing the commercials and industrials, but also my experience was very different in that, like the very first film audition I had, I booked. And so,
wow.
And then Oliver Stone came through town he did 3 movies at that time. Well, let's see, he did Born on the 4th of July, talk radio, which I had roles, just small roles in both of those. And then when I moved to LA, the very first job I had was on The Doors.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
That's when I moved to LA, I remember The Doors on the whiskey that they were filming at that time. So we were there at the same time. Interesting.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So Oliver Stone, okay, back up. Mm-hmm. Let's talk us through that first audition for that.
You know what? This is, okay, that's a really good question. I had auditioned, the casting director, they had their description, what they were looking for, and it was the role, the character, she was a tart. Just one of those women.
Oh, yeah.
And I auditioned, and what they did back then, we didn't have video auditions. You had the cassette tapes, and you had to overnight them to LA. So all of our tapes were sent to LA, and when the callbacks came in, I was not on the callback list. And so Ed Johnston at the time he was the casting director. And the story is that he was with Oliver Stone, and Oliver looked at the list, and he said to Ed, he goes, listen, if there's somebody that you think I should see that's not on this list, bring them in. And Ed says, yes, well, yes, because I guess the feedback was that I was too old for the role. And Ed couldn't understand that because there were other women on the list that were clearly older than I was. He said, this doesn't make any sense. So he brought me in, and I walked through the door. And actually, so it was during the callbacks. Oliver had just won the, I think it was the Caesar Award. It was, the equivalent of our Academy Award, I think it was in Italy, for Platoon.
Oh, wow.
And so he was in a really good mood. And he looked up and he looked at me, and I just knew that role was mine. And, it was.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great.
Wow.
It was really great.
I mean, in your first role.
That wasn't the first thing I ever auditioned for, but it was certainly the first really big and important, studio film.
If you can paint a little picture of what it was like in Dallas at that time trying to be an actor.
You know what? It was very different at that time. I believe, the studios at Las Colinas had just been built, and it was looking like, the tax incentives were we're trying to get them now, and it really was a hot spot, and it was looking like we were going to do some stuff, and so there were quite a few movies that had come through town, and so it was exciting. But I moved to LA because I knew that if I wanted to ever audition for anything that was a bigger role more than a day player, you had to be there. At that time, you had to be in LA or New York.
It's still kind of like that, where like a production will come here, but they're really not getting principals from here usually, right? Has that changed at all?
It depends. Right now, there's so much more product. I tell my actors often that it's in a way, it's the best time to be an actor because there's so much, demand. We've got streaming, HBO, Netflix, all that. When I was acting, you had studios. If you didn't have a studio behind you, the movie probably wasn't going to get made, or if it was going to be just a real low budget.
Yeah, no one was going to see it.
Yeah, so I think it's different. I think there's a lot of indie films around here that are getting made, and the local actors really do have a shot that they probably would not have had when I was acting.
Yeah, that does seem the case. Like because I'll call myself a failed actor.
Yeah,
I feel like I missed my calling. Like I got to LA when I was really young and I didn't know what I was doing. And by the time I figured it out, I was fed up with all of it.
You know what? There is a sweet spot. It really is.
Yeah.
I think you have to. I've seen too many actors go there. Just not prepared. Either not prepared with their training or not prepared with doing smaller roles, and then they get to LA, and of course the numbers are a lot more competition. So. Right. They kind of hurt themselves by, not being ready. And then, of course, it crushes your self-confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I do, anyone that asks me, not that a lot of people are anymore, I'm like, if you want to go to LA or New York, establish yourself here.
Yes, I agree.
And what's funny, too, maybe you saw this, too, but when I moved to LA, a lot of friends came after me. More than half of them went back home.
Yes.
Like they didn't stay because it's like, let's try to, and that's something we deal with the music community. That's probably not something you're even aware of is that, these artists will like kind of make it and they go away and they're not from Texas anymore. And it's kind of annoying, but anyway, a little off track. So you go to LA, you're out there for a little bit. Like what are some of the stuff you were doing out there when you were?
Well, I have to say my experience was very, very different from most actors. And I'm aware that I don't know that I was at the time. It happens. And it's like, oh, this isn't as hard as they say it's going to be. Because I very quickly had a manager. And he was a A-list manager. And then I very quickly had an agent. And again, I was auditioning and I was working. I was on, again, this was in the 90s. But I was on Nightcourt, which was at the time I think it was like the number 3, rated show. That was before we had all the cable and streaming. But it was a really, really great show, and so I was on that, and then booked a few movies here and there. So I had this agent, I had a manager, and then again I told you I worked with Oliver Stone. Inside of the first year, I actually auditioned for Steven Spielberg. And it was the role of a mermaid in the movie Hook, and I didn't get it, and I guess I just wasn't mermaid looking enough. But that was just very, very heady, and then I found myself in this just amazing acting class. My coach at that time was Roy London, who really, he was it. If you were going to study anywhere, because I tell people he not only coached working actors, he coached movie stars. You know, at that time, his master class was Michelle Pfeiffer, Sharon Stone, Brad Pitt, Gina Davis. He coached Robert Downey Jr., Gary Shandling. And, you know, the impact he had on me in my life is truly immeasurable.
Yeah, I was fortunate to like take a couple of classes with Roy.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I audited and
Yeah.
yeah. So then, I mean, that was a pretty influential teacher, and having that kind of experience, is that sort of what opened your eyes to being a teacher?
Well, what happened, and this is kind of an important part of the story. I got to a point, I was putting my reel together one day, and I realized, wow, I have been in bra and underwear a lot. I have been in bed with men who weren't my husband a lot. I mean, they weren't, you know, they were legit Disney films. I was in a film with Kathleen Turner called V.I. Warshawski, and the movie Dutch. It was a John Hughes film. Yeah, always in my underwear. And I thought, I'm not in my underwear this much in my real life. And I thought, this is not who I am. So I had a talk with Roy. This was actually, we did not know he was sick, and it was a few months before he died. And I asked him, I couldn't understand why I wasn't working more, because I knew I was doing solid work. And this was a game changer. He said, "Oh, Theresa, that's easy." And I said, "What?" He goes, "Hollywood does not make movies for women like you." He says, in the 40s, you would have owned this town. He goes, but those roles are just not there. And so I just really did a deep dive and was exploring, you know, what was out. And I would get out the movie section of the papers and see, you know, for every, 9 movies made for men, by men, with men, there was one with a lead female. And I thought, what in the world am I doing? And it was so frustrating, because I realized Hollywood didn't want women.
Yeah.
And it was that's just the way it was. And so I was extremely frustrated and limited. And it was just at that time that I had a couple my mentor, and then I actually had 2 mentors. One was one of the producers from Nightcourt, and they not only encouraged me to write, but they sort of insisted on it. And I said, okay, I guess I'll give this writing a try, because they knew how frustrated I was.
Sure.
And so I started writing, and I love it. Yeah.
That's really, that's cool. But just going back into that moment in time, I mean, it's not changed a ton. I guess there's more roles now for women. But,
so many more.
But there was a long
Absolutely.
time where that was the story. And I mean, I did a lot of extra work. So I would hang out with girls that worked on like Entourage, and like the stories you hear just from that. It's just make anyone want to leave Hollywood. Honestly.
Well, if you think about it, back in the 40s, you know, it probably, you know, 8 out of 10 of the top box office stars were women. And then, and then, you know, when I was in the 80s and 90s, I don't think there were any women in the top 10. Not one, you know, maybe one. And now I checked it out recently, and it's inching towards half and half. So that's nice.
Well, I think part of it is that, you know, there's more women writers, and I mean, maybe some men writers are more aware of it now too. But you know, I see a lot of shows and movies now that
absolutely.
But God, how frustrating is that? You like achieve your goal, and it's like the world you're in is just not ready for you.
But you know what? I'm not the Lone Ranger here. It happens to a lot of people. You know, what's in demand, you know, one year is not the next year, and so I think all actors sort of go through that feeling of, okay, I'm just the first thought is I'm not any good. But then if you just look at the numbers and look what, you know, again, what are they looking for? You know, you just may not be what's in vogue right now.
Yeah. I think too, like of some of the moments where I was like, oh, I nailed this audition. Why didn't I get it? And then I see who they cast, and I'm just like, God, I tortured myself for so long. Like, you're never going to be 7 feet tall or whatever. You know, it's just, you just can't be like, you know, it's not a play. That's the problem. Maybe that's what it is. I was raised in theater where you can play, like I was playing Don Quixote in high school.
Oh, wow.
So you're thinking I could do any role. Like they just need, it's like, no, that's just not how it really works. There's not enough people in high school to play all the roles, I guess.
Yeah, you have to be kind of realistic. I have a funny story for you. I auditioned for, it was a car commercial one time, and I went in, and the casting director, she just fell in love with me. Oh my gosh, you were so good. This is so great. I think you're going to get this. You're my favorite. And I love thinking, wow, it looks like I'm going to get this. I think it was a national car commercial. Wow. And then I don't hear back, and I don't get a call back. And then next thing you know, I see the commercial on TV. She got the part.
What?
The casting, I thought, isn't there some sort of ethics violation
that was a
there?
thing. Like because I was auditioning for commercials at one period in LA, and then I was like, this is the guy that's, He's in every freaking commercial because like that. The thing is, they'd get paid well actually in LA, but then they'd run the audition, they'd get to know the casting people, and they'd be the last person on the reel every time.
Yeah,
you're right. There should be a law against that crap. That's annoying. Let's go back though. So writing, like, so you start writing, like, let's. How did that
well, you know, initially it was actually very cathartic, and all my stories come about from a different direction. There might be a character that I latch into that I thought, you know, I wonder what their story is. And then just the ideas come to me once I put, you know, pen to paper, usually. And then, you know, and of course, like most writers, you know, your first drafts are not good at all. They're garbage, really. But I'm extremely tenacious, and I'm really good at figuring things out. And so the very first thing I wrote, I entered it into a competition, and it was the award was $1 million for your film. You could make them if you can make a $1 million movie, you know, you would win, and you could direct it and all that. And so lo and behold, out of 3,000 entries, I was in the top 10.
Ooh.
When that was the first thing I wrote.
Wow.
I thought, you know what, I might have some talent with this. And so then and then you start the next one and the next one. And I don't know, the stories anymore, they tend to sort of tell themselves, you know, once I give them my time and attention. And so that was the first one. And then I'm a terrible salesperson. I'm terrible at self-promotion. I really don't like the show business. And so, you know, I have made some short films from stuff that I've written. I've had a couple other screenplays that did really, really well in competitions. Probably the one that most people would recognize would be Project Greenlight. I had one, it was actually the very first Project Greenlight competition in the early, I think it was 2001. I entered a piece that I had written, and it finished in the top 30 out of 7,000 entries.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did make a short out of that.
So do you only write screenplays? Do you do short stories or anything else?
Yeah, no, I there's something, I see life in scenes. I think it's just from being around it so much. You know, everything is a scene to me. And I think now, from coaching for so long, I've been a coach for 22 years, there's this beautiful synergy that happens with having coached literally thousands of scenes and knowing the dynamics and knowing what works in a scene, what makes a good scene. It's just made the whole screenwriting process so much easier.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so screenwriting, then how do we become an acting coach?
Okay, so when I moved to Dallas, it was what year did I move? 2000. Again, it was a family situation that brought me here. And I realized, I mean, in short, I have a son, a grown son, and his, when he was a teenager, he had moved back here to live with his dad. That was my promise. And he was only here a couple years when his dad passed away. So I'm in LA, and I thought, okay, I got a tough decision to make here. I either bring my kid back to Hollywood, or I move back to Texas, where he's been going to school, he's playing football, he's being scouted, he's, you know, having a great time. And so I just did what any good mother would do and packed my bags and came back to Dallas. And, you know, of course I had to get a new job. And so at the time, I had been helping a friend at a law office in LA. And so I deemed myself a legal secretary. I was terrible at it, absolutely awful. But, you know, I could get the job done. And, you know, so I came here and I you know, got a job at a law firm. And within a few months, I thought, this will kill me. You know, my soul will be destroyed if I don't find something creative to do.
Sure.
But I didn't really want to act again, just because, you know, it's difficult to go from reading for and being in films, or, you know, auditioning for Steven Spielberg or working with Oliver Stone and then deciding to do like an industrial. I just couldn't do that. It's like, no, that's not what I want to do.
I get that.
Yeah, and I needed the you know, constancy of I needed a steady paycheck, et cetera. So, but I'm at the law firm, and then it occurred to me that maybe I, you know, could do coach actors. So, you know, you put your shingle out, and for a long time I had, like, I don't know, 4 or 6 people in my living room, and I was in my living room in my apartment for a few years, and then it just kept growing. And so now that, the studio has 7 classes a week.
Oh, wow.
I coach 4 of them, and I have 2 assistant coaches that coach the other 3. And it's no one's more surprised than I am, actually.
And you do like one-on-ones as well?
I do one-on-ones, yeah.
Yeah. So, and can you tell us maybe some success stories of people?
Years ago, I coached a young lady. Her name is Chantel Van Santen, and she was a regular on One Tree Hill.
Oh.
And then I coached Drew Waters, and he's still acting. He's in Georgia now, I believe. And he was on Friday Night Lights, and then he's just done a lot of guest starring roles in different projects. And the one that I'm most excited and proud of is a young man by the name of Jack Elliott, who right now has you know what? I want to say it is extremely highly rated on Amazon, but it's on the INSP network, the Wild West Chronicles, and he plays Bat Masterson. Oh, wow. And he's a phenomenal actor. He is truly one of the best I ever coached. And, stardom should have found him, a decade ago, but he's a lot like me in that the self-promotion thing it's just not in him.
Yeah, and especially now that's like even more of a thing where you have to self-promote.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Media.
And so, but somehow he fell into this gig, and they're shooting season 3.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's I'm going to give him a shout. There's a great interview of him in Cowboys and Indians magazine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it just came out. And he's doing well, and I expect, more great things from him.
Can you maybe... there was a gap, I guess, from being in Roy London's class to actually start coaching, but like maybe some things that really came through, maybe even subconsciously when you started teaching that he had taught to you.
Oh gosh, so much. I mean, this man was. The things that I remember. It just the whole idea of being interesting and bringing as much of yourself to the project and not acting. There were a couple just moments, just real very personal things that he said to me that again, they were life-changing moments.
Yeah.
And one in particular. I was doing a scene. Oh gosh, it was from the Arthur Miller play Bus Stop, and it's something Marilyn Monroe had done. And my first line was, "What bus is this?" And when I say it took me 45 minutes to get that line right, I'm not exaggerating.
Right.
And so he stopped me. I finally got it right. And he said, why was that so difficult? And I said, Roy, I just feel like if I do it like that, that's just so masculine. And so he took a poll of the men in the class. He said, raise your hand if you think Theresa's masculine. They did not. And I said, I feel like I will have lost every cell of femininity in my body. And he goes, what is your idea of feminine? Joan Collins? And that was just it was like, oh my God, I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because I was acting, I was doing my idea of what this woman was rather than just trusting that I was a woman and I could pull it off.
Right. Right. It's so interesting to me, like the whole, like going to acting class to learn how to be natural.
Oh,
but it's so crucial. I feel
and what I think so. I teach scene study and character analysis, and I tell my actors all the time there isn't a class that I don't learn something new about a scene and how it was crafted and what's going on here. I learned so much just coaching these scenes, and of course I try to coach really well written material. So
sure.
That's certainly
even just having the experience of being in a class and having 4 other people do the same scene as me is so eye opening.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because like when I guess maybe more experienced actors look at it. For me, it's I would have trouble finding different. This is the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of people. And then you see 5 other people do it, and you're like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
And it's just interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always tell my actors too, I said, it's really, really important to realize that, our goal is to help the writer tell their story as honestly as we can, to the extent that we know their intention. If you can read the whole script, great. but there isn't any one way to do it. There isn't any right way to do it. Ultimately, you want to be effective. You have to help tell the story. You want to be interesting. You want to be truthful, and it's going to turn out the way it's going to turn out. And I like to think that my to the extent that I have any true value or worth as a coach is that. Because I have been doing this so long, it's really, really easy for me to watch a scene and know whether it's working or not. And when I say working, I mean, it's simple. Will people pay to watch this?
Right.
And if the answer is no, then we have work to do.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people maybe can see what's wrong, but the gift is you can say, well, this is, let me just show this, give you this mirror, as it were.
Absolutely. And there's just certain things that consistently will bump a scene up, make it a little bit better, than it would be.
Yeah. I mean, for me, one of the hardest things was, and maybe it's because I was approaching it wrong, was like, I'm going into an audition and I've got this character and I've got this thing, and then I'm in the room, and I'm in this room with this person with a piece of paper, and I can never get out of that. I never got past any of that.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is really hard. Yeah. And that's putting up that fourth wall and just really imagining you're somewhere else. It's very challenging.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me ask you, we touched on it briefly, because when I lived in Austin in 2007, and I remember like going to the Capitol and trying to get tax incentives for the, what's the state of that today?
That's a really good question. I'm actually excited because I know some people who are personally working on that, and it comes around all the time. But the bill has been introduced. I don't believe they have voted on it yet, but I know they had the conversations and the negotiations. So my understanding is that it's still up in the air.
Okay,
but it's looking like we're getting closer than we have been in a while.
It's just so frustrating because I really got behind that. I mean, I really pay attention to the top, and it's like all it does is bring money to the state.
Yeah.
There's really there's no downside.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're like, don't want Hollywood in your city, but why wouldn't you? I have a memory of one of those, like we were protesting or whatever, and I just remember the guy speaking. He's like, the movie The Alamo was filmed in Louisiana. Do you want that to be the way we represented in Texas? It's just funny to me, why do we shoot ourselves in the foot here
I know.
so much?
Yeah. I hope it happens. That would be so amazing.
It would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, we have the new studio in Mansfield, and there's rumors of others.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's I'm not sure when it's supposed to open, but
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So I'm going to ask you about advice to actors. The first, you don't have to say take class, because everyone should know that. Even if they don't, if you're a young actor, take class. So beyond that, what would you say?
Well, outside of class, there's so much studying you can do, especially now with YouTube. Oh my gosh, there's all kinds of, masterclass, and the Hollywood Reporter has the roundtable, and you can listen to actors and get their, take on various things. Be persistent. You just have to be persistent. It doesn't happen overnight. I've often said that in some ways, acting is very competitive. Yes. And I had a friend, he said, oh, well, it's not as hard as being a pro athlete. And I said, you know what? Maybe physically. I said, but if you're a pro athlete, there's something about you that suggests you should probably be an athlete. Actors don't have that. Anybody can wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to be an actor. Sure. And so that just makes the field a lot more crowded, and that's 90% of the battle is just getting past everybody else who's trying to do it.
Yeah. I mean, longevity, consistency. That's
I think
hard.
persistence, I think, like anything, be honest with yourself, be able to watch your videos and say, oh, you know what, that wasn't so great. Maybe I could do better, or I should do better. And not to let, I think... my actors will come in and they'll start something, and they'll look at me and they'll say, don't judge me. And I'll say, well, I've never, ever judged you. I'm assessing you. I have to assess whether or not this is, going to work.
Don't judge me, really?
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's funny. Like, what? If you don't want to be judged, don't be seen.
Well, I just soften it with, I'm assessing you.
Yeah, I mean,
and plus, you know what? We're all on the same page. All of us in the studio, me and everybody, we all want exactly the same thing, in that we I want and they want to be the best they can be. You know, so that's what we're always working towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else coming up? A projects or screenplay?
What am I working on? Well, I am working with a couple producers, having my scripts read, trying to, you know, get something made, you know, but nothing too immediate.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if people want to take class with you? Can they reach out?
They can. The studio, we have a website. It's tbellactorstudio.com. And it really, all the information they need is on there. There's a FAQ page. There's a, you know, to get started, I ask actors to come observe a class so they know exactly what they're getting into. And then I do have an audition for a placement class just because I like to make sure that people can memorize, you know, answer their questions, find out what their schedule is. And yeah, it works.
I want to thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
I will say I did take class with you, and I highly recommend it.
Oh, thank
I
you.
stopped taking because that's literally when I stopped acting completely. And it was the best decision for me. Me and Rob talked about how we quit acting many times, but this time it actually it took.
Stuck.
Yeah, I found other things that I'm good at, so that helps. Anyway, thanks again, Theresa.
Well, thank you. It's been great. Thanks.
I'd like to thank my guest, Theresa Bell. If you're interested in acting classes, you can look her up at T Bell Studios. Theme song Unstoppable by Salim Nurala. You can listen to the Dallas Famous podcast every week on Deep LM Radio, Sundays and Tuesdays at 1 p.m., and then again on all the podcast places.